Oki, and welcome everyone to our first keynote for Women in Entrepreneurship Week. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the University of Lethbridge is located on traditional Blackfoot Confederacy territory. Our university's Blackfoot name is Iniskim, meaning Sacred Buffalo Stone. We honor the Blackfoot people and all Indigenous people who have helped shape and continue to strengthen our university community. My name is Kelly Williams-Witt, and I am the Associate Dean of the Dhillon School of Business. I'm a professor of human resources and labor relations and an entrepreneur. I started a small consulting business in 2009, and that supported me throughout my academic journey while I did my MBA and my PhD, and I continue to operate that on a much smaller scale right now, but I still continue to operate that organization. So Women in Entrepreneurship Week was created in 2014 by the Feliciano Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Montclair State University in New Jersey. The idea was to nurture women entrepreneurs and energize people from around the world by offering practical advice and inspiration from female founders. Today, more than 200 universities and colleges in 30 countries host Women in Entrepreneurship Week. This year, we've partnered with 6 other post-secondary institutions in Alberta, including the University of Calgary, the University of Lethbridge, the University of Alberta, Mount Royal College, Concordia, Lethbridge College, and NATE, as well as Tech Connect. We will be celebrating Women in Entrepreneurship Week from September 21st to the 25th with a virtual lineup of keynotes and panels. Tonight's presentation is hosted by the Dhillon School of Business, which is why I'm here, with support from our colleagues in Agility. Before we start, I'd like to speak really briefly about something that sounds like it's kind of the opposite of what we're discussing and celebrating this week. I want to talk about failure. So one of the things that we try to instill in our students at the Dhillon School of Business is that it is okay to fail. In fact, failure is necessary. It's how we learn what works and what doesn't. It's how we become resilient. It's how we create sustainable success, because success is not an endpoint. If there's anything that COVID-19 has taught entrepreneurs and business owners, it's that the world will change, and you can only have sustainable success if you learn and adapt along the way. So future entrepreneurs, plan as well as you can, but don't give up when you hit an obstacle. Figure out why it's there, go around it, go over it, or move in a new direction if that's what you need to do. Failure happens to every entrepreneur, but the ones who achieve their dreams are the ones who get back up, dust themselves off, learn from their mistakes, and forge ahead. Tonight, we are very excited to have one of those very talented entrepreneurs with our opening keynote speaker, Sarah Lajeunesse, speaking about the power of women who lead. Now, I'll follow the advice of Walt Disney, who once said the best way to get started on anything is to quit talking and start doing. So I'll turn over the virtual stage for a word from our sponsor, Enterprise Holding, very generous sponsors for our event tonight. Ashley Hipson is a Western Canada talent acquisition specialist with Enterprise. Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be involved in this incredible week celebrating women in entrepreneurship. As a company, Enterprise knows firsthand the value of powerful women in business. In our company's 60-year history, we've had only 4 CEOs, with half of them being women. Our Pam Nicholson, who started her career in our management training program, rose to the top job of CEO, which she held for 13 years. She recently retired last year, and our current CEO, Chrissy Taylor, is now not only the highest ranking woman in the entire US car rental industry, but based on company revenue, she is among the top female CEOs across all industries. Most recently, in April of this year, Enterprise was named to Forbes' list for Best Employers for Women. At Enterprise, we value the contributions of all of our employees and pride ourselves in the opportunities created for everyone. If you're looking to start your career with unlimited opportunities, we are hiring, and I will include a link in the chat box for more information. Thank you again for including us this evening.
Thank you so much, Ashley, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Heather Hardy. I'm the coordinator of our Dhillon School Business Student Professional Development Program. I have the pleasure tonight of introducing Sarah, our keynote speaker. Before I do that, though, a couple of housekeeping items. For all of our guests joining us, you'll see a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. That's where you're going to be able to ask questions. So for this particular webinar, you won't have the ability to ask your question with your voice. We're going to ask that you type it in. I do want to make note, there is a chat box. Please don't get confused. We will not be checking the chat box. We will only be checking the Q&A box. So feel free, as the keynote's going on, if a question pops into your head, please type it in there. At the end, Sarah will be taking questions, and at that point, we will start pulling questions out of the chat or the Q&A box. So please do that as you're going on. If you do have any questions or concerns as the webinar is going on, in your link from Eventbrite, you'll see the Agility email there. Please email that for any questions that you have. With that now, I'll introduce our keynote speaker. So Sarah Lajeunesse is an alumna of the University of Lethbridge Faculty of Management, now known as the Dhillon School of Business. We're so honored to have her back tonight. Usually we'd been inviting her back onto campus, but today we're doing that in a virtual capacity. So thank you all for joining us, students, faculty, community. Sarah graduated with a Bachelor of Management Marketing degree and a minor in social responsibility. She is an internationally certified and award-winning coach, writer, and speaker who helps high-achieving and ambitious women prioritize their own needs and well-being in their personal and professional lives. She works with clients spanning several different countries and has spoken to audiences in Canada, the US, and Europe. And we are so lucky to have her speaking to us all today. Her work has been featured in a wide variety of media publications, including Dynamic Businesswomen, Inspired Coach, The Businesswomen Media, Elephant Journal, and many more. Through Sarah's online and in-person experiential coaching sessions, keynote speaking, and her award-nominated Women's Empowerment Workshop series, her mission is to help women improve their health, build their wealth, and overcome the barriers and self-imposed beliefs that prevent them from forging their own path in their career, business, and in life. Tonight, Sarah will be sharing her story of working in a male-dominated industry of professional sports to walking away from a decade-long journey to the Nike headquarters in order to start her own business. Sarah knows firsthand the challenges that can arise and how to overcome those barriers and self-imposed beliefs that prevent women from forging their own path. She believes that not only do we need more women starting their own businesses, but more women thriving in the workplace and more women holding leadership positions. She believes it's crucial that we do it boldly, authentically, and while helping to raise other women up along the way. With that, I will now pass it off to our keynote speaker, Sarah Lajeunesse.
Thanks, Heather. Thank you, Ashley and Kelly. Can everyone, or can anyone pop in the chat, or Heather, just let me know if you can hear and see me okay? Okay, awesome. Cool, I will share my screen. Awesome. Okay, well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm so excited to be here with everyone. And as Heather mentioned, this event initially looked quite a bit different. And I would have been presenting this talk at the University of Lethbridge, but with all things COVID, the talk adapted and was rolled into this amazing week-long Women in Entrepreneurship event, which allowed just shy of 150 people to register for it. So it's so amazing, and I'm just so honored and grateful that all of you are spending your Monday evenings or wherever you are in the world here in this conversation. So just to dive in, I'm just going to move this box over here. To dive right into the agenda here, I'm going to share a bit about who I am and my story for those of you who don't know me. Why I believe this work is so important, what drives our behaviors, our beliefs, and our actions that ultimately can prevent women from actually advancing and doing the things that they want to do in life. the common fears that prevent women from achieving what it is that they want, and a few actionable steps to actually take away and implement into your life moving forward following this conversation. And as Heather mentioned, there will be a brief Q&A session towards the end. And so if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A box throughout the conversation, and then Heather and Layla will be able to field those questions to me towards the end. Cool. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Lajeunesse. I'm a certified and award-winning coach, speaker, and most recently a podcaster devoted to helping women live, lead, and show up in the world their own way. Now, I had someone very recently reach out and say, hey, Sarah, checked out your website. Looks cool and all, but I don't really get what you're trying to accomplish here or what you're trying to do. So in a more simple sense, and for those of you who don't really get it, I support women in identifying first what she wants in her life's work, and her legacy to be about regardless of societal and external expectations, and then subsequently support her and other women all around the world working through those barriers and fears that prevent her from moving forward and achieving that. So as Heather mentioned, I've worked with women spanning several different countries around the world. I've spoken to audiences in Canada, the US, and Europe, and have led and facilitated retreats, gatherings, and workshops on the power and importance of women who lead. So a lot of people ask, how did I get here? And I wanted to share a very brief background as to my journey and how it led me to doing the work that I do today. So my story in a nutshell is I became obsessed with the prospect of working in the sports marketing world at a young age. I think I was probably 15 or so when I saw a Nike commercial where women were portrayed as strong and powerful athletes. And I was blown away at the emotion that this commercial was able to invoke and how it made me feel that women were unstoppable. So my goal in life immediately began to be about whatever it took to get to the Nike headquarters and to create these powerful and emotion-invoking commercials that reminded women of their potential and capabilities. So this passion ultimately led to a 5-year-long career in sports, working for multiple sports teams and organizations across the country. And externally, my life looked pretty good. I was being approached by and interviewing with league head offices, sports organizations, and other sports leagues in different countries. I was winning awards like the top 5 under 25 to watch in the sports business industry across Canada. And I was hosting and networking with our corporate sponsors and executives in games and in corporate suites. However, despite the seemingly successful life that I was portraying, that I had chased after for over a decade, something different was going on internally. While I was putting everything into my work, I started to put everything else on the back burner, including my health, relationships, self-care, and needs. I started to believe that in order to succeed in this industry, exhaustion, burnout, and constant stress was simply a means to an end, a necessity, and I was simply earning my stripes. So despite all of the external achievements, what was going on behind the scenes was this. I was driving home from receiving these awards, feeling empty, realizing that I thought that this kind of external achievement and validation would bring me happiness and fulfillment. And now that I was achieving these accomplishments, I realized that I had never felt more hopeless, lonely, and unfulfilled in these moments. While I was hosting sponsor executives in suites and on the field and organizing VIP appearances with our halftime artists, I had heart monitors strapped to my chest to monitor my heart rate due to the severe anxiety attacks I was having on a regular basis. I was 25. And in between the interviews, the accomplishments, the achievements, I tried to make time for yoga and calm my nerves. I was so pent up thinking of all the emails I would be missing one morning that I suddenly fell faint in the studio, ran to the washroom and collapsed on the floor, sobbing, vomiting, and shaking uncontrollably. And as the yoga teacher dabbed a wet washcloth on my forehead, I thought to myself, I'm killing myself over a career and a life that no longer aligns with the person that I want to be and the life that I want to live. In short, I had forgot along the way what truly made me happy. And it took some time to finally walk away from that previous life of mine. I believe there's this time that lies in between the awakening and the awareness of wanting something more. and the moment when you actually acknowledge and accept that you're capable, worthy, and deserving of creating that something more. A new way of living, one that wasn't ingrained in you from a young age or that required someone else's permission, but one that was simply waiting for you to provide that permission to yourself. And what my soul was craving at that time was deeper meaning, a higher purpose, and something more. I wanted to make a difference in the lives of other people in the world. I wanted to make the world better than when I found it. At the time, that looked like supporting women in recognizing that something more that they were craving, and to support them in gaining the clarity, confidence, and courage to go after it. So I obtained my coaching certification, and since then I've conducted one-on-one, online, and in-person coaching, hosted workshops, a retreat in LA, spoke to audience in different countries, and coached and worked with women spanning several countries, ranging in ages from their early 20s to their late 50s. And what I have come to realize is that ultimately, we as women are really quite simple. We're not asking for a lot here. We want a sense of belonging and community. We want to connect to our purpose and begin to live it. We want to make the world a better place for our children and the generation of children to come. We want money and power so that we can have better control over our lives and so that we can live without fear or worry. We want to give back to our communities and to causes and organizations that are important to us. We want to be proud of our life's work and to know that it and our lives mattered. We want to feel happy and to find the courage and bravery to show up fully, wholly, and without shame as ourselves. So simple, right? So during that time, during the time that I worked with clients around the world, again, as I mentioned, different stages, different ages in their life, I've realized that most of us, interestingly enough, aren't truly happy with where we're at. We feel our lives are good or fine, but we feel like they could be so much more. In the words of Glennon Doyle, we wonder, wasn't life supposed to be so much more beautiful than this? And I believe that the reason that there's such a large discrepancy between the life that we want and the life that we are living is I believe that we as women have been conditioned by society, life experiences, and influential people in our lives to live a specific kind of definition of success and happiness. We've been conditioned to act, talk, live, work, lead, and show up in the world a certain way. However, that way doesn't work anymore, if it ever did. And women all over the world are waking up, wanting more, and finally giving themselves permission to do so. So my work started taking shape in helping women to find their own definition of happiness and success, regardless of societal expectations and norms, and work through the internal and the external barriers that prevent them from going after the careers and the lives that would fulfill and excite them. So before I dive into all of that, I want to discuss the why. I've had people reach out to me and ask, is this work actually still necessary in 2020? And if you haven't been sleeping under a rock, you would know that the answer to that is yes. And despite voting rights, despite being able to sign up for our own line of credit, despite being able to open a bank account without a mail to co-sign, there is still so much more work to be done. So I want to go over why this work is so important. And I've captured 5 primary reasons why this work is needed and why we need everyone to get on board and do their part. The first reason is for power and influence. Not to bore you with stats, but according to Televest, women make up less than 19% of corporate boards, 4% of Fortune 500 CEOs, and earn 78 cents to the dollar of men, 52 to 64 cents if you're a woman of color. Women will retire with 2/3 the assets that men have, and on average, live longer. Less than 4% of venture capital dollars go towards women-founded businesses, less than 1% if you're a woman of color. And the average loan for women-owned businesses is 31% less than for male-owned businesses. It's no surprise that women are at a disadvantage when it comes to starting their own businesses, advancing in the workplace, and transitioning into leadership positions. This ultimately prevents women from having the power and influence to break the cycle. And never before have we needed change in our leadership around the world more than in this moment. We are witnessing how leaders are responding to a global pandemic, Black Lives Matter, and situations that are disproportionately impacting women, mothers, and at an even greater scale, women of color. We need massive change in the world, and the qualities and strengths that women are inherently built with, compassion, empathy, collaboration, risk aversion, to name a few, are qualities that we need in our leaders, now more than ever. The next is money and choice. This was a shocking statistic to me, or a shocking tidbit to me, but it wasn't until 1964 when women became allowed to open a bank account without obtaining their husband's signature. It wasn't until the 1970s, and it was still in the 1970s where 2/3 of women were welfare recipients in Canada. And at that point, women were still earning 57 cents to every dollar earned by men. There are people on this call that were alive at that point. It was not that long ago. In 1974, women were finally allowed a line of credit on their own. Before this, you would actually have to get a male to co-sign with you. So we have been taught historically and conditioned that women are not good at managing money, which has resulted in being dependent on spouses, making women vulnerable in retirement and after divorce, and has created shame around having conversations about wealth, worth, and salary amongst us. Statistics show that when women make money, they invest the majority of their earnings back into their family, their communities, and the future. Women invest in better education for their kids. They invest in the next generations. They support organizations and causes that matter to them. They take care of the environment. They invest in political candidates making a difference. And with more money, women can live without fear and worry. They can get out of relationships that are abusive. They can go back to school when they think it's too late. They can take a risk and start their own business or transition into a new career path that excites them. They can finally prioritize their own needs and wants after years of prioritizing everyone else around them. Future generations and the world. Our world is quite literally burning around us. We are in the midst of a global pandemic. We are in a centuries too late racial uprising. And there is a difference in the way that female-led companies and countries are responding. The very qualities that you wished at some point in your life were different about you, or that society has faulted us for. That compassion, the empathy, the collaboration that we talked about, they are the very qualities that we need in leaders around the world more than ever. And the last and the most important of them all is because of you. One of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite authors, Robin Sharma, is unexpressed potential turns to pain. Women were taught a certain way of being at a young age. Go to school, get a decent job, marry by a certain age, and ensure kids follow shortly after. Not that that approach is wrong if you want it, but for the women whose lives look a little differently, the societal norms and expectations can result in decades worth of shame and guilt if you don't fit that traditional box. And unfortunately, fulfillment, creativity, and creating a life that would actually excite you is rarely addressed or encouraged. So one day you wake up realizing that you've checked all of the boxes that were supposed to make you happy, that were supposed to make you fit in. And often what I hear when I work with female clients is that they've forgotten to ask themselves what would make them personally, truly happy or fulfilled along their journey. So where do we go from here? I believe the first step to changing our beliefs and our mindsets about our worth, value, and place in the world begins with the awareness of how the truth got distorted. And we have a responsibility to ourselves, our children, and the future generations to come to begin unlearning. So my research and my work have led me down a path of trying to determine how we can unlearn these stories that society has told us. How can we as women unapologetically start asking for more, owning our worth, and showing up in the world fully, wholly, and without shame as ourselves? So what prevents us from asking for what we want in life unapologetically? And if we can't control the societal narrative, what can we as women do to change our own internal narrative? I have two theories that I'd like to briefly share with all of you. And I also want to preface that the work that I do with clients around this topic is typically a 5-month process. So given we have another 30 minutes, I'm going to keep it brief. The first area is to understand the psyche and the strengths of the female brain and how it differs from males. There's a psychiatrist named Dr. Amen who wrote a book called Unleash the Power of the Female Brain. If you have not read it, I highly encourage you to do so. In his book and through his research of conducting hundreds of thousands of brain scans, he concluded that women's brains have 5 special strengths, which we of course as women know and have already covered: intuition, empathy, collaboration, self-control, and a little worry. Empathy allows women to be loving and nurturing. Intuition enables women to quickly grasp information that may not be obvious or easy to justify through logic. Self-control gives women better control over their impulses. Their collaborative gifts help them work with others. And their tendency to worry, when it's in the right proportion, keep them focused on possible problems and alert to potential solutions. However, like all gifts, these have their dark sides. Empathy can morph into an overwhelming sense of the world riding on your shoulders, the feeling that you have to take care of everyone before your own needs ever get met. Intuition can awake anxiety-provoking fears, as you know something is not right without making sure to check it out or get more information. The brain frequently can misperceive things. Self-control can turn into trying to over-control others. Being collaborative can all too easy turn into feeling that you aren't allowed to make any decisions until you've gotten agreement from everyone else, such as your coworkers, family, or partners. And the worry that is so useful in small doses can stress you to the point where it hurts your brain and your body and won't allow you to rest. So in other words, to feel well and make decisions from a feeling of empowerment, brave, and a courageous space, and to utilize our strengths in a way that support our end goal, not prohibits them, it is critical to take the time and create the space to become selfish. Prioritize yourself, prioritize your own self-care, fill your own cup. Do the things that you need to do in order to thrive, because no one will remind you to nurture, nourish, and take care of yourself except for you. We cannot support our children. We cannot improve our communities. We cannot make the world a better place if we are operating from an empty glass. The second area that I focus on is unlearning what a woman has been taught in society from life experiences or from influential people that do not have your best interests at heart. When female clients come to me, a lot of the time our focus is about making change in their lives, trusting themselves, their capabilities, their worth, and developing the courage to start down a new path that would allow them to experience more freedom. Some of my clients have wanted to apply for new roles, talk to their management about promotions, and ask for salary raises. Some have wanted to start a new job, start a new business, go back to school and learn something new. However, over the course of running my business for the last 4 years, working with women, different ages, different spaces in their life, what I have learned is I believe that there's top common fears that intertwine and weave amongst every single woman when they're on the verge of doing something great or meaningful for them in their life. So I'm going to jump into those common fears. The first is the fear of not being enough. When I was first launching my business, my mom convinced me to go to a day-long yoga retreat with her friends to ease my stress. During the first activity of the day, we had to turn to the person next to us who we didn't know and share what we were most afraid of. Really light content. So I turned to the woman beside me, and she was in her late 50s. And I, immediately started thinking about everything that I was scared about. And I was launching my business the next day. I was certain all the links were going to fail. I was certain I made a huge, disastrous career choice, quitting my sports career. And as I'm, sputtering all this out, I'm turned to the person beside me, and I realize that she's trembling, and her lips are trembling, and she has a tear rolling down her cheek. And I remember just stopping my tracks and asking, what are you most afraid of? And she shared with me, she said that I have waited my entire life to go to a yoga retreat. I've always wanted to do yoga. I wanted to do my teacher training at a young age. And I was like, well, what's the problem? You're here, you're doing it. And she said, Sarah, this is the first time in 57 years that I've ever given myself permission to do yoga. I was scared that no one would want to learn from me. I was scared that I would get stage fright teaching in front of a group of people. I was scared that my body type wouldn't fit into, those tight spandex pants that skinny yoga instructors always look so good in. And she's like, my greatest fear is that I would go my entire life not doing what I always wanted to do. And she had fun. And she did yoga, and she danced, and she laughed, and she committed to signing up for teacher training at the end of the day. And she had the time of her life. And so the question that I would ask with regards to this specific fear is, what areas of your life are you not showing up out of fear of not being enough? The next fear that I see a commonality amongst all of my clients and women all over the world is fear that we aren't worthy. I have a close friend who is applying for a senior level position on a male-dominated executive team. She was starting to get recognized by peers and people were encouraging her to apply. She reached out to me and was looking for a reason not to. She was nervous of being the only female. She was nervous that she was too young and surely no one would take her seriously or listen to her. So she wanted my advice on if she should wait until there was another female to set the tone for her or blaze the trail for her. And the truth is, there is no right time to blaze our own path. We have to be willing to set our egos and our fears aside to pave the way for ourselves and for the other women to come. If not you, then who? And if you don't, how many others that follow will delay their own advancement because they were waiting for a trailblazing woman like you to pave the way? The next fear is the fear of being seen. My friend and colleague recently asked me, as I was preparing for this conversation, are you just born not caring what other people think, that you're able to get up on a stage and not feel like vomiting? Or in this case, in front of my computer. The truth is that I want to vomit every time I get on a stage, or as I mentioned, this stage, or in this case, in front of a computer. The last time I spoke at the university, I told my partner, Chris, who's actually watching this recording with our brand new puppy, I told my partner to never let me do this ever again because of the anxiety and the nerves and the fear that I have leading up to these events. And every time I get off the phone with Heather, after she invites me to speak at the university and I say yes, I always ask myself, why do you do this to yourself? And then I show up and I survive. And if I impact or inspire one person in here, or if I say one thing that makes one of you want to take a risk to do the thing you've always dreamt of doing, then wasn't me having the courage to look like a complete idiot or swallow my own vomit if worse comes to worse worth it? When you get to the edge of your limits expand. So go to your limits and risk being seen. You have no idea how many people are waiting for you to do so. The next one is the fear of the responsibility that may come with your success. And there are so many stories that I could share here, but one way just to boil it down into a simple quote, a quote that I've pinned up that I always come back to time and time again, is from Marianne Williamson. And it says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Fear of failure. A while ago, I was going through an existential crisis, as I go through, it seems like once every year. This was a while back. I moved back in with my dad at the time. I'd just broken off a 5-year-long relationship. I'd moved out of my house. I'd sold all my possessions. I was planning to pick up and move to Bali and was questioning what I should do with my life. And that somewhere along the way, I had gone horribly, horribly wrong. My dad told me this story. When he was first becoming a teacher, he told his parents, and the first thing his mother said to him was that he'd never make it and that he'd never be a good enough teacher. So he wrote them a letter asking them to believe in him and that he would make a difference and that he would follow his dream. 30 years later, I still have friends, previous students and parents of his previous students approaching me or messaging me completely out of the blue on Facebook or Instagram to tell me what an impact my father had made on their lives. That he was the one teacher believed in the potential of every single student, and that he believed in those that didn't believe in themselves. Had my dad not had the strength to prove someone wrong, to pursue his dreams despite his most influential figures in his life telling him otherwise, would I have had the courage and bravery to go for mine? So where are you scared to fail? And even further, how can you support someone else who might, like my father, have parents, teachers, or other influential people in their lives who don't remind them of their capabilities? So moving forward, what can we as women do? Number one, learn about and thank the women that came before you. Reach out to your mom, your grandmother, your sisters, the women who didn't have the same opportunities that we have, the women who have sacrificed their own happiness in order to make a better life for us. How can we honor them? How can we thank them? How can we make sure their self-sacrifice stops with their generation? Number two, stop and create space for yourself unapologetically. Decide what would make you happy and what could make you feel alive. This is relevant for your work, your relationships, and every aspect in your life. Then take the time and do the work required to believe you are worthy of it. Number three, do it for our future generations. A couple of years ago, I gave a talk at the Lethbridge College to a group of 100 young girls ages 7 to 12. During my talk, I asked the group what they wanted to be when they grew up. Without any hesitation, the group cried out inspiring and courageous answers like the Prime Minister, the first female president, an astrophysicist, a lawyer with a side Zumba business. I liked her entrepreneurial spirit. Someone else yelled out the founder of Microsoft. It was admirable, but that one was already taken. And perhaps the most memorable interaction from the entire day was with a little girl named Avery. Avery, I had noticed, was taking notes ferociously throughout the talk. She had these sweet little glasses, her light brown hair fell loosely out of her braids, and she was wearing little overalls and tiny Converse shoes. She was dressed way cooler than I was. And after the talk concluded, Avery hopped down the bleachers and beelined in my direction. I was curious where this was going to go. Her confidence was obvious. She tucked her little pencil behind her ear and pulled my hand down so that I was at eye level with her little 7-year-old self. She said, "Great talk, Sarah. I really enjoyed it. I just had a couple points that I wanted to share." I said, "Absolutely. Avery, what do you got for me?" And she said, "People are like snowflakes, Sarah. No two are alike. So I'm curious, why do you have so many stories about women who are trying to be anyone but themselves?" I had to pause and was momentarily silenced. My first thought was, Avery, are you accepting any clients? And would you be my life coach? And secondly, I thought, at what age do we stop believing and loving and trusting who we all are at our core? I was on the edge of my seat now. So I said, "Fair point, Avery. What else you got for me?" And she took a quick glance at her notepad to make sure she wasn't forgetting anything. And she said, "You know those women from your story, Sarah, the ones that lived their entire lives not doing the things they've always wanted to do? I want you to tell them something." And she threw her notepad against the ground for dramatic effect. And she said, "Life is short, Sarah. Tell them to go live it." And in those moments of fear or doubt, or on the days when I don't believe that I can do brave or courageous things, I think of her and her fierce tenacity, her bravery, her courage. And I think to myself, what can I do to help ensure she has every opportunity to maintain that fierce tenacity throughout her life? That she has the space, the encouragement, the support, and the opportunities to grow into the natural born leader that little 7-year-old already is at her core. And if Avery isn't enough to instill in you a feeling to do everything, or a desire to do everything you can to ensure the next generation of women grow up with every opportunity that they deserve, then do it for her, or her, or her, or them. Do it for your daughters, your nieces, your little sisters. Do it for the Averys of the world, and even more importantly, do it for your younger self and remind her of her capabilities, her worth, and her power on the days when she forgets. Because I know for certain that we haven't even scratched the surface of how incredible the world could be if more women owned their power, listened to their purpose, and trusted their potential to lead. Companies would perform better, communities would become safer, and the world would become a better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. If we could all clap silently. Sorry, you can't hear the loud round of applause like you usually would, but we're all clapping behind our screens. I promise you of that.
Thanks, Heather.
That was fantastic. For everybody, just a little reminder, the Q&A box at the bottom is where you can start posting your questions. But I will kick it off with one for you, Sarah. So you mentioned Avery motivates you. I loved that story. Aside from women everywhere, what really motivates you day to day to keep on going?
I think going back to one of the fears that, well, I guess that answer is two-part. One of the fears, the conversation that I had with a friend, was applying for that executive level position. And I think to myself, if not me, then who? And how many women are waiting for someone to give themselves permission. And we see it all over, we need someone who is representing or can show us what is possible. And with more women then, I think, shoving their egos to the side, or their fears, or, having the difficult conversations despite it making us shake. We need those people, we need those conversations, and we need to move past our fears to do the things that women need to see more in the world. So I think that's a big one for me. And the second one is that favorite quote of mine, that unexpressed potential turns to pain. And these existential crises that I go through, I think they always occur when I know that I am not living the life that I'm capable of living. And so I'm not doing things that scare me. I'm not putting myself out there to make myself grow personally and professionally. And so that's kind of acted as a compass for me to know, okay, I do not want to get, as dark as it sounds, I don't want to get to the end of my life with any regret, or with a feeling that I had any potential left to give, that I didn't use it. So that drives me. And then my third, sorry, I know I said two answers. My third would be my little niece. And she was actually one of those photos up there on the board. But my sister is an incredibly strong and brilliant woman. So I'm not actually concerned about my niece in the slightest. But she is someone that I think I connected more because of her to the idea of the next generation, and the importance of us all to use our voice for good, and use our voice for, whatever we want to do in the world, and show people what's possible. So that would be my answer.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Many of the viewers, I'm assuming, are looking at entrepreneurship as a potential future endeavor. I know for yourself, you started more along that mainstream, hoping to work your way up in Nike. What advice would you have for students, community members, really anybody out there thinking about starting their own business? Do you think it's critical to have those first steps, even if maybe they weren't the most positive steps in business, working your way up? Or do you think potentially you might have been ready to start your entrepreneurial endeavor off the bat?
I think, and this ties in very nicely to the message that I really wanted to reiterate, and the work that I do. It's ultimately about everyone's own unique journey. So there is no one size fits all approach. There's no right or wrong. I think people are driven to do something based on their own life experiences and their own beliefs. So it would be, we talk about one of those incredibly powerful strengths that women have is their intuition. If you're getting this little nagging feeling inside that you're meant for something bigger or something more, or, something that you just can't stop thinking about, start exploring that and give yourself permission to start learning more, doing what you need to do. I think Kelly also touched on, a really good point. I don't know necessarily that there's ever going to be an age or a stage in your career where it's either, again, the right time or the wrong time. I would say the best piece of advice is just being willing to fail. And that's another thing I think women or young girls are taught when they're young, to be good and to sit quietly and play nice and raise your hand and wait until, someone speaks to you. Boys are taught to be brave and to try new things. And there's a difference in what our society encourages young boys versus young girls to do. So really shifting the narrative, and I see that so much in women's mindsets about what holds us back so much is that fear of failure. And, I was reading a book called The Confidence Code, another great book for anyone on this call who wants to read about women in business or women in leadership positions and the confidence piece. But it talks about how women are so terrified to fail, and that prevents them from doing so much or doing the things that they always wanted to do. So, and it also talks about how athletes, females who are athletes or who have played sports in the past, there's actually statistics around a higher correlation that those women are in more leadership positions. And they believe it's because they have experienced failure and they know the process of failure and getting up again and going back to the field, going back to the court, whatever it is. So really shifting that narrative of failure is going to come no matter what, and be willing to look stupid, be willing to, fail and try again, be willing to check your ego at the door, to try and be in pursuit of what really excites you. Because there's so many times, Heather, I'm sorry to say that, like, I want to call you after you've invited me to speak and cancel, or like, maybe, I just got a little sick, or I didn't get a whole lot of sleep, or we just got a puppy on the weekend. She didn't give me any sleep the last 2 nights. So like, can we just record this? And there, that inner critic and ego is so powerful and so strong, it can derail you from doing absolutely anything. So really shifting that narrative that it's not failure, it's just simply getting up, trying again, and course correcting you into the right path.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I'm glad you don't cancel on us, Sarah. You are fantastic and way too hard on yourself. Thank you for always saying yes. On the note of entrepreneurship, one of our guests has asked, how would you recommend keeping a relationship healthy with a parent that is very against your business idea and taking classes in school to succeed at it?
Okay. So this is a great question. So and just so I understand, because I already started thinking about my answer halfway through, it was, what do you do essentially if your parents want you to maybe go the traditional route of school and career versus entrepreneurship?
I think it's the person is trying to pursue entrepreneurship and their parent, isn't really in favor of it. And the students taking classes to, I think, build that entrepreneurial endeavor.
Okay. So I think it's twofold here. Going back to that story of my dad, you can see, and I could see the emotion when he was telling me that story. I get emotional every time I think about that story, picturing my father at a young age looking up to his most influential people in his life and feeling that they don't believe in him. So I would say that it's important to communicate to your parents how meaningful this is to you or how important it is to you, and ask for their support. Ask them, yes, I get that you're trying to, it all comes from a place of love. I get that you want what's best for me. I get that you want me to be financially stable, and that's so wonderful, but like, let me do this. Let me try. And worst comes to worst, I will get a job in the long term. I will, whatever it takes. But I think having that courageous conversation to say, this is what I want, I need your support. Because in the early stages of entrepreneurship, I think that for me anyways, I was so fragile in the sense of anything could derail me. If something went wrong, if I got a negative comment, you know, I would immediately go to that place of, oh, absolutely, everyone is right. My parents were right. My friends were right. Like, this was such a stupid idea. I should go back. So it is so important to create that bubble of people that support you. So A is having that courageous conversation. B, there's Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed, and she talks about, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but she talks about the moment a woman becomes a mother is when she becomes, it's something to the extent, paraphrasing, independent of her own mother, or, you know, something, or when she stops becoming, or when she stops acting like the child of her mother. Again, sorry, butchering that. But the ideas, and so she went through this period where she realized she was gay, she was going to get married. Her mother was super concerned about her sharing this message with the world. She obviously had a huge influential following. And so every time she was around her and her partner and her children, the mother would have a lot of fear and she would instill it on them. And again, it came from a place of love. But it, you know, she would say, well, what if people hate you? What if you never get these book deals? What if, you know, your career just goes up in flames? And eventually she got to the point where she had to draw a boundary in terms of, okay, this is our island of happiness. And if you are not on board, then I will raise the drawbridge and you are not allowed on our island. If you continue to try to bring your fear here, if you can leave your fear at the door, we will lower the drawbridge, we will let you in. And so her mother immediately said, like, okay, let me think on that. I see your point. And that conversation never came up again. So it's asking for that support and courage if you feel like you can. And if not, and if that's not received, then being willing to set that boundary and, even more importantly, surround yourself with people who do believe you and who do encourage you to take risks and see what your potential and capabilities are, because you will go through so many periods of where you doubt yourself. And yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for all of those lessons along the way, but yeah, they're difficult conversations to have for sure.
Absolutely. Great advice. So we have another question from the audience. It's true that the world is awakening to women in power, but do you think there's a bias when giving women opportunities where they are specifically meant only for women? For instance, organizations start considering color, race, body shape, body size, rather than what they could put into the table in terms of their knowledge and capabilities.
Okay, so just so I understand that, the question is, and actually maybe you can just...
I can paraphrase it for you.
Yeah, if you can.
Do you think
it's a concern about society wanting to advance women because of their race, their gender, whatever, rather than what they can actually bring to the table?
Right, correct.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. I think we see this a lot with race and tokenism and people trying to just tick off the boxes of the correct gender or the correct race in their organization. So absolutely, that could be something, and likely something that occurs. But women and people of color and people who are less privileged have been held back for so long that take those opportunities and roll with it and, you know, demonstrate and be another person that is showing what is possible. Because unless we see more women, more people of color, more people who are less fortunate, the rest of the population or the people who fall into those minority groups will never think it's possible. So yes, I think companies do that. Do I think it's a bad thing if it gets someone in the door that is a woman or a person of color or someone who is a minority group that doesn't have the same opportunities as other people of privilege? Then yeah, take it and then create change and look to help lift other people up along the way who need it.
Fantastic. Super. Thank you, Sarah. Audience, I think we'll do 2 more questions and then we will cut it off for the night. So another question for you. What advice would you give to young women who are looking for female mentors, especially in sectors where there's little representation in upper management or senior positions?
Great question. So I would say don't just, so 2 things. I think there are 2 different things. There's a mentor and a sponsor. Sponsors can typically be males in, well, it can be any gender, but sponsors, I've had sponsors that are males in male-dominated offices or those industries. And that's someone who just encourages or creates opportunities for you, or encourages you to take steps, or speaks highly on your behalf to try to get more opportunities. I was speaking to a woman a few weeks back, and her husband, he is high up in the oil and gas industry here in Calgary. And he, she's mentioning that he actually intentionally goes through salaries and pulls out and identifies when a woman is not being paid equally as her male counterpart who is doing the same job. And then he dives into that and he tries to understand, well, what's going on here? What's the discrepancy? And ensures then that their salaries are matched. He will have conversations with women who he believes and who he knows has, phenomenal potential, but who may not always believe that in themselves, and has conversations about how or what can we do in order for you to advance or put your hand up for this opportunity, or grow in your industry of choice. So that would be a sponsor. So I would say, don't just limit yourself to the idea of a mentor only. Even if you're in a male-dominated industry, there are so many, regardless that my talk is all about the power of women who lead. I love men. There are so many phenomenal men around the world who are so wonderful and so in support of wanting women to advance. And find those people in your organization and see if you can start, ask to take them for coffee or start having a conversation, see if you can develop that type of sponsor relationship. So don't just, again, hold it to the idea of having a female mentorship or mentor. The second thing is, if there are not females in your organization or in your industry, then start expanding into different industries, start expanding into different offices. It doesn't have to be in one specific place. Women who are high up in the corporate sector, or who are entrepreneurs, or who are leaders, they fight the same battles. They fight the same inner critic or the inner dialogue saying they're never enough, they're not worthy. If you read this confidence code, it literally is an entire book about, female athletes, female, astronauts, or like such brilliant females in all of these high up institutions and professions, at the Pentagon, in politics, whatever. And they all share the exact same story of fear that they weren't enough, fear of failure, the imposter syndrome, that they don't deserve their spot at the table. So don't restrict yourself just to your organization. And lastly, build a genuine relationship first, so that it's also mutually exclusive and it's not just reaching out cold calling. I think a lot of women, especially higher up in industries or corporate settings, get cold calls of like, hey, will you be my mentor? And Sheryl Sandberg, in her book Lean In, another great book to read, she talks about whatever Dr. Seuss books, where it's like, are you my mother? And she correlates that to, are you my mentor? Because so many people just kind of wander around asking for a mentor to try to advance their careers without actually being strategic about it and wanting to prove themselves and really developing and strengthening that relationship. So that was a lot, but that would be my advice there.
Super. Thank you, Sarah. We're seeing lots of questions around books. So I know you've already mentioned lots of different authors and titles. A couple of people asking specifically the book you mentioned about the female brain. What was the title of that?
I have it right here. Well, it's on my Kobo. Unleash the Power of the Female Brain by Dr. Daniel Amen.
Excellent.
It's an amazing book.
And on that note, I know you've already mentioned a lot, but any other ones that you would recommend for our audience to check out?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Untamed. Always, I've already read that like 3 times. And yeah, Unleashing the Power of the Female Brain. I think Lean In is it is older, but I think one that's worth going back to time and time again. The Confidence Code is a great one about the science and the psychology behind why women struggle with confidence. And it goes into, you know, all of the messaging and conditioning that we receive over our entire lifespan, from body image to our career paths, to what we're capable of, to our place in society. So that is a great one. Oh, there's one more, Own It, phenomenal book by Sally Krawcheck. She's the founder of Ellevest and the CEO of Elevate Network. And her work is all about helping women become more financially stable and understanding investments and understanding the importance of really understanding money in a world where we have been, as women, conditioned to believe we're not good with money or we're not good with finances. So we'll just let, you know, the male of the household deal with that. And so, you know, that was some of her statistics that I pulled into this presentation, just about how women are retiring with 2/3 of the income from men. Women are also living a bit longer. So it puts them, if we are not, I guess, financially knowledgeable or have an understanding of where our money is going, then it makes us more vulnerable through divorce or retirement, and so have you. And she came from some Wall Street companies and she was pretty high up, and yeah, just brilliant woman. So that would be another one. And my last one, actually, only because it's right here, Something More by Sarah Van Brennick. Excavating Your Authentic Self. So that one's a bit more just kind of focused on your own kind of self-care and the self-work and understanding how we've lost connection to our intuition and our own authenticity throughout our life. So many books.
Fantastic. That's great. Love it. Last question of the night for you, Sarah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in your presentation to fill the glass. And I'm wondering, for everybody watching, male, female, what are some things that you do to remind you to fill the glass, to take that time to recharge? What are your strategies?
So I kind of have this little almost 3-prong Venn diagram for myself, but it's some of the work that I do with my clients as well. And it's focused on health, wealth, and impact. And so with health, and you know, I have this whole thing mapped out, and I check in on this often. But the idea for health is it's not just about physical health, but your mental health, your spiritual health, your relational health, your psychological health. So just all of these areas where I think when you're so busy and so caught up in the day-to-day, you can sometimes neglect, and especially in our current climate that we're in, when I think a lot of people are experiencing days where they're just not okay, they just don't feel themselves. It's easy to neglect taking care of ourselves in a world and a climate right now that is so heavy. Like, we can feel the collective heaviness of what's going on in the world. So more than ever, it's important to, and interesting, I just had a conversation with a couple of people on this. Self-care is so different to everyone. It's so unique, and it's personalized to everyone, where we can have this idea where it needs to be meditation or, you know, something to that extent. But some people could feel connected or just, you know, part of something greater when they're in prayer, some when they're playing an instrument, some when they're playing hockey with all of their friends, or different sports, or playing with their niece and nephew, for myself. So I think the first step is to write out and come up with a strategy or an action plan of what are the things that make me feel rested and like my cup is full and recharged. You know, you could also get into different personality types. Some people are energized with, you know, being around other people. Some people need that alone time. Some people are, you know, they wake up early in the morning to get that quiet time. Some are night owls. So I'm not answering your question, but that's how you can start to figure it out. And then for me, I get up very early in the morning. I try to get up by 5 or 5:30, and I will make a coffee. I will meditate for however long I feel like it, 10 to 15 minutes or so. I will read a book for about 45 minutes. I will journal just some of the things or the stressors that are on my mind, or some of the things that I want to accomplish that day, just so I can get some of the clutter out of my head. And then I will try to make time either then or at another point in the day for exercise, because I find that that alone can just shift me and shift my mindset if I'm in a dark place or feeling sad or feeling not myself or whatever. And like I mentioned, my partner and I just got a new puppy. I was thinking of throwing her in the presentation, but I didn't. Her name is Molly. She is the tiniest little creature. And I am already like, anytime I was feeling stressed today, I was lying on the floor rolling around with her, and she bites my hair, and we have so much fun. So that, and then also connecting with family. I think in my previous very high stress, fast paced days in sports, I moved away, I lost relationships, I stopped trying to stay in touch, I think, even with family to a point, because I was so busy that whole experience made me appreciate family. This entire year made me appreciate family. So connecting with, my family and my sister, like I mentioned, she has 3-year-old twins. So seeing them always fills up my cup as well. So yeah, I would say that's kind of my method, but again, reiterating that it's important for everyone to identify what uniquely and personally self-care means to you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I hope that everybody has something they've taken away from your presentation. I know for sure I have. So thank you so much for making the time and for pursuing through, not canceling. Your puppy sounds adorable.
Yeah, I'll have to send you a photo after.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much. And thank you to Enterprise for sponsoring our speaker tonight. This wouldn't have been possible without you. So thank you so much. Thank you to Kelly for doing our intro from the Dhillon School of Business. Thank you to Layla, who is my counterpart in the planning. She works in agility at the University of Lethbridge. Couldn't have done it without you, Layla. So thank you so much. Today's event has been a partnership with many other institutions as well, though. So as Kelly, our Associate Dean, mentioned at the beginning, Women in Entrepreneurship Week is a massive global event. We're doing our own Alberta version with 6 other post-secondary institutions. We're very thankful for those partners who are working with us. For all of our guests, please be sure to check out the rest of the week. Today is just the beginning of the whole week, kickoff of all of the different speakers and panels to come. So do make sure you check those out. You can check the schedule and register at albertawew.ca. Tomorrow, there's 2 more presentations coming up. At noon, Jess Black's going to be talking about her pursuit in entrepreneurship in the trades. And then at 7 p.m., we'll have the Blackfoot Women's Empowerment Project. So many things to come throughout the week. So please do check those out. But thank you so much for everybody for tuning in virtually. It's been a very different event than it typically would be, but I'm so glad that we're still able to do some professional development events and bring everybody together. So thank you all so much and have a great evening.